Oh, hi, it's your old buddy Zoo, and today we're going deep into the KONKR Pocket Fit. This is made by Ayaneo. It's part of their budget line. Now, don't get crazy. It's not like an Ambernex XX device you can get for like $35 on sale. No, this is more budget in the sense that you can get a top-of-the-line, like, to-the-wall device for about $240. That's a pretty good deal. We'll talk about the price more in the video, but suffice to say, it's a bargain. Now, I've had a couple Ayaneo devices in the past, and honestly, I've never really been wowed by them. They're either too expensive, on the wrong side of a new chip debut, too convoluted, or too glitchy. So with Ayaneo starting a budget line, I had a lot of reasons to be nervous. I honestly didn't even believe a lot of the early hype from some of the guys in the scenes. Even Stubbs, who did 2 live streams on the thing and was sending me DMs like, Zoo, you won't believe this thing. It's amazing, it's amazing. And I was still kind of like, we'll see. But honestly, once I got my hands on this sucker, I changed my mind. I changed my mind like that. Now, if Ayaneo can actually ship these by the end of the year, this is probably going to be my handheld of the year. Like, not even a probably. It's going to be my handheld of the year. Or, depending on your pathological need to have the latest and greatest, this might be the handheld for the rest of your life. That is how good it is. Anywho, you better go take a whiz now because we're going to be talking about this thing for a long time in my KONKR Pocket Fit Deep Dive Review. Ooh. Well, let's start off this video not with the KONKR Pocket Fit. No, let's talk about my history with Ayaneo. I went all in on the Pocket Air here a few years ago, and it was the best handheld I ever had for about 3 days until the Odin 2 was announced. All of a sudden, I had a dead-on-arrival device that got roundly beaten in every performance metric there was. Sheer power, driver compatibility, Android gaming, the works. I was pissed, and I told myself I would never buy another Ayaneo device again.
And I remember coming home to my wife and I said, never again.
Without crazy amounts of research. In addition to the specs getting blown out of the water, the Android build Ayaneo was using was really awkward. It had a front end that I never quite got to work. And I tried too. I was halfway through an ISpace video before I just gave up. It also had some glitchy performance and weird quick setting things going on, and it just really felt awkward, especially compared to something like the Odin 2 with Daijisho or Emulation Station. And it wasn't unique to the Pocket Air either. I reviewed the Pocket Micro earlier this year, and while it was premium as hell, it also had that same glitchy Android experience. Suffice to say, I wasn't expecting much, especially from their budget line, but honest to God, I think someone over there sat down and just said, look, the Odin 2 is amazing. Let's make our own version. We're going to cut costs a little bit with an LCD screen instead of OLED, and let's just see what happens. It's one of the most improbable comeback stories I've ever seen, and I've been an Indians fan since I was a kid. I saw those guys come all the way back from 14-2 one Sunday night to beat the Mariners. Anywho, this thing is amazing. It is hitting way outside of its weight class, and if you leave the video right now, just know that you should get one if you're interested. Don't actually leave the video though, because I have a lot more stuff to talk about, like how I got this review model. Ayaneo sent this to Stubbs and he did a couple videos on it. And by the way, if you want several hours of gameplay testing, check those out. They're linked in the description. But anyways, Stubbs was moving on to the next shiny thing, and he swapped this with me for an old Win 600. Honestly, it was probably the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals. Maybe ever. But it benefited me, so who cares? When I powered this guy on while waiting for my flight home, I was immediately worried because look what's there. My old enemy, ISpace. However, Stubbs had already thrown on Emulation Station as a front end, and so I was able to bebop around and play some random games that were still on the internal storage. About halfway through the plane ride, I knew this thing was amazing, mostly because I had fired up some Switch games, and they all ran super well. I know you can tweak things and get a lot of games running on lesser chipsets by using specialized drivers and all that stuff, but this thing just runs games. The last time I experienced that was when I reviewed the Odin 2 and tried to load some PS2 games. Prior to that, I just sort of expected that I would need to mess around with underclocking and all that crap, but the Odin 2 pretty much ran every PS2 game I could throw at it and just ran it right out of the box. This same kind of out-of-the-box experience with some relatively unoptimized emulators was enough to upend my entire review plan. It's why I ended up making a dedicated Switch showcase video last week. It was just so unexpected and refreshing that I couldn't stop throwing games at it and seeing what it would do. Anyway, this introduction has been dragging for a while now, so let's talk about concrete stuff, like the specs. So this particular model we're reviewing today is the G3 Gen 3 model, configured with 12 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of onboard storage. Now there are two chipset options with different RAM and storage configurations, but outside of that, all the devices have this same 6-inch 1080p screen. It's an LCD screen, which almost certainly helped drive down the price compared to an OLED panel, but it has a refresh rate of up to 144 Hertz. So you can do all sorts of emulation tricks with RetroArch, or stream or play local AAA games like Silksong here with blazing fast refresh rates. All of the devices also have an 8,000 milliamp hour battery with fast charging, and this thing is fast too. Like, I had it go from stone cold dead to 98% in like 45 minutes, and that was while I was actively playing Unicorn Overlord on it. You also got Hall triggers, Hall sticks, top-of-the-line Wi-Fi, top-of-the-line Bluetooth, Android 14, a big old fan in the back, and a 6-axis gyroscope for stuff that supports it. It's chart time! So the differences all come down to the chipset and RAM and storage. As you can see on this handy chart, you can get the Snapdragon G3 Gen 3 in 4 different configurations, ranging from one with 8 gigabytes of RAM and 128 gigs of onboard storage, to a model with 16 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. I'd honestly just stick to either the 12 gigabyte model here, or maybe the 16 gigabyte one, but only with 512 gigs of onboard storage. I don't think you need to spend an extra $50 for more storage when, SD cards exist. On the other side of the spectrum, you have 4 configurations using the Snapdragon 8 Elite, ranging again from a model with 8 gigs of RAM all the way to one with 24 gigabytes of RAM and 1 terabyte of storage. There's also a more expensive Duck model with 24 gigs of RAM, but it's $40 more just for the odd as hell color option. But heck, if you like it and you're already invested in the Pocket Fit, heck, go nuts. Drop the extra $40 on it. Treat yourself. Speaking of $40, let's talk about price, because the budget nature of this device is intriguing. Right now, we're in an extended super early bird period, which means the prices on these things are absurd. Take, for instance, the base Elite 8 model. Right now, it's available for roughly $270, give or take a buck or two on Hong Kong dollar conversions. The equivalent AYN Odin 3 model is $329. That's a $60 price difference. And yeah, the Odin 3 will have an OLED screen, but still, that's like 22% savings. Now, these super early bird prices will eventually end, and then we're going to slide into the MSRP, which means this will cost about $329, which is the same as the AYN Odin 3. However, someone's probably always going to be running a sale, so it might be difficult for you to actually try to buy one of these for $329. I think it might always be a little bit less than that. All that being said, right now, the KONKR Pocket Fit is delivering roughly equivalent powers to the Odin 3 for significantly less money, albeit with an LCD screen instead of AMOLED. If you're an OLED snob, then you're probably going to go with the Odin 3. Otherwise, this is an amazing deal. And again, thinking historically, they're offering one variant with an identical chipset to the Odin 3, and one here, the G3 Gen 3, that is absolutely no slouch in its own regard. That is a far cry from the Pocket Air with the measly Dimensity 1200 coming out almost simultaneously as the Odin 2. Can you tell I'm still butthurt about the Pocket Air? Let's talk about design and ergonomics here. Going through the device tour, the first thing you see is this big old 6-inch 1080p screen front and center, along with a bevy of buttons and controls. This is kind of a compromised design that uses the all-glass front that seems to be the rage nowadays, but it also has a plastic edge all the way around, and the edge kind of creeps up and over the sides. It's easier to see on like the yellow model, but I really like it. It's kind of the best of both worlds if you're going to have a glass front. I honestly don't like glass fronts in general, because the device inevitably gets smudges all over. I can control my thumbs when it's just glass on the screen, but glass around the buttons and the sticks means my greasy paws are getting everywhere. The face buttons on here are fine. They are a little loud for my liking, especially when you're going ham in a game. Starts to get a little bit absurd. The D-pad's pretty good. It's a good size compared to the device as a whole, and it's got good height. I don't know if you can pick that up, that black on black's kind of hard to pick up, but it has a really good height. It almost feels like it's gonna bottom out, but it doesn't. It's got a rubber membrane in there, and it's a hair loose when you're trying to be super precise, but honestly, it's a good all-around D-pad, and it's really good for fighting games where you're going ham on fireballs. You got a handful of Android buttons on the front, and start and select are on the bottom here, and I hate that. Luckily, you can go into the settings, and you can change the SE/ST mode to make these guys on top start and select. And then these guys on the bottom become function keys. Easy peasy. Let's talk about these sticks, because I hate them. I took the stock sticks off as soon as I could and replaced them with hype sticks. Stay in there and never come out. The stock ones are just way too small. I could see using them on something like a clamshell or a super portable device, but this thing is huge. Only a dummy would try to casually pocket this. There's no need for tiny sticks. Luckily, these are those standardized plugs, so hype sticks or other sticks with the same dimensions will work fine. The overall placement of the sticks is actually really, really good. Some of these devices have good parts and good components, but the overall layout makes playing more modern games kind of awkward. This is not the case here. Up on top, we have our shoulder buttons and our triggers. Everything is well positioned, and these buttons are quiet. I cannot tell you how many loud triggers and shoulder buttons I've had that ruin a device for sneaky bedtime gaming. The triggers also have a switch like you'd see on some x86 devices that toggles them between a more analog style or a quick twitch button press. I normally keep mine down because I like that full analog feel, but it is, I guess, very situational depending on your playing style. But it's also nice to have. I could see like competitive FPS players really liking these as buttons instead of analog pulls. Also on top are these two sneaky buttons. These are actually the back and home buttons in Android. And for the first few hours I had this, I could not figure this out. I honestly didn't even see them because they just kind of blend in, and I was assuming that home and back were like, maybe I have to hold this down for 2 seconds or 3 seconds, or maybe it's all just gesture based. But no, the function buttons are up here, and they're super unobtrusive to the point where I didn't even realize they were there in the first place. There's also some mappable back buttons, but I really don't use them. They're also right where my hands go on the grip, and I feel like I'm hitting them a lot on accident, so maybe it's good that they're not mapped to anything. You've got a pretty simple power button and volume rocker on the top, and then you have the SD card and your USB-C port on the bottom. The SD card slot is one of my sneaky favorite things about this because it's on a hinge, and you don't have to futz around. You just press that down, and it opens. Look at that. It's almost like loading a magazine into a gun. The reason that I love this is because the other style where it's on like a little toggle pull, it's always in my way. I'm always futzing around with it. But this, open up, easy access. Pretty cool. Also, the speakers are down here.
I'm sure of it. It was at Egros, just after the war's end. You'll pardon me.
Quiet you. They're pretty good. I have no real complaints. But if you are hearing something that's a hair off, there's actually an equalizer in the settings, which is pretty cool if you're crazy OCD about sound. And also, headphone jack on the bottom, which is nice. The screen on this is really, really good for an LCD. It gets fairly bright, so you could play it outside. Maybe not like in direct sun at the beach without a shade, but otherwise, it's good. It also gets fairly dim. It's not the dimmest screen I've ever encountered, not by a wide margin, but it does pass my wife is asleep next to me test, i.e. she's gently and contentedly sawing logs while I'm testing archery abuse strategies in Final Fantasy Tactics here. Over here is the KONKR button, which brings up the Ayaneo menu, kind of like the Steam menu on a SteamOS device. You can hot swap through the performance levels. You can change your fan, you can set a performance overlay, and you can set the refresh rate, in addition to doing a bunch of controller configurations, device configurations, all your Android configurations, all sorts of stuff. Pretty cool, and it's all right there with a button. This thing also has butt doots, and I applaud Ayaneo for putting butt doots on here. I've come to realize that I need something to grip. I can't do a flat butt horizontal device. It's just not ergonomic and it hurts my hands. So good on them for adding these grips. And they're not just so I can hold on to the device. They kind of, I don't know if you can catch that, they kind of like batarang up to the triggers. So the overall experience is actually super comfortable and super ergonomic, especially for long sessions. All that being said, I'm probably going to drop this off with my boys over at JC Studios just for a few days, just to see if they can make an extended grip for this guy. I'm not going to hide this in my pocket or a slim bag or anything, so we might as well go all out and get some Xbox Ally style grips. Let's compare this real quick with a few devices. First, the Ayaneo Pocket Air. You see the shoulders and the buttons here are very similar. The layout of everything is actually very similar. This one does have a smaller, albeit OLED screen, but they are quite similar in rough shape. This is obviously a little bit thicker, and I think it's actually a little bit more ergonomic, to be honest. And let's compare it to the Retroid Pocket 5 here. You can see, again, it's kind of a similar idea, but the Retroid Pocket 5 has very, very minimal ergonomics. It's obviously a lot smaller, doesn't have that giant fan port on top, doesn't have as many function buttons. I normally rock this with a grip, but this is on the edge of being pocketable, so I see kind of why they made it a little bit slimmer. But if you're going to go with that 6-inch screen, it's obviously a lot wider, a lot taller, might as well just go all out with ergonomics. Now, this device will absolutely dominate anything from Atari through PlayStation 2 without needing even the slightest bit of tinkering. Honestly, the only real tweaking you're going to want to do is either with advanced shaders or with black frame insertion in RetroArch, or seeing how far you can push the resolution in Dolphin or Aether SX. It's not going to make a ton of difference if you push it past 1080p because the screen is 1080p, but who knows? Maybe you just like a vulgar display of power every now and again. Nice. Ah.
Switch, follow me. Help me with those fighters. Hold on, Luke. I'm on my way.
PS3 on here is actually kind of a weird treat because a lot of games will play well. It's really down to emulator compatibility as opposed to the power requirements. If you do find games that emulate well, then you can play them on here. I'm not going to go super deep into PS3 because I still don't know a ton about it, but I chucked on the latest build of RPCSX, and it's actually really impressive. Let me know if you want to see some more expanded PS3 testing. I don't know if Rob, the Retro Tech Dad, has his KONKR yet, so it might be a while before his inevitable 50-minute long showcase video for PlayStation 3. Now, I already did an entire Switch video on this device, and while there is still some concern about driver compatibility on the 8 Elite model, this version here can honestly raw dog most of the catalog. For instance, before I tried installing any turnip drivers or advanced tweaking, pretty much everything I threw at it ran at 1080p docked at a steady 30 or 60 FPS. Some games, like I Can't Conceptualize How to Use Ultra Hand: Tears of the Zoo, needed a lot more work. I still encountered a lot of graphical issues until I switched to the latest turnip driver or advanced Eden settings, and even then, it's not perfect. But otherwise, this thing is solid as hell for the Switch library, like to an absurd degree. This might be my new way to play Switch games, like above and beyond using a super powerful x86 device like the Xbox Ally or my Legion Go S. Like, it's just so simple. And battery life, it's amazing. It's amazing. GameHub on here is also a super interesting proposition. Stubbs has like a 2-hour-long live stream where he played a bunch of games using GameHub. But I don't know, I might do a dedicated GameHub video if there's interest. He played stuff like Metro last night, Metal Gear Rising, some other games. And honestly, if it runs, it's probably going to run well. It's kind of amazing. Here's a couple games I installed from my Steam account. The initial run takes a hot minute as you download the game and you install runtime stuff. But after that, as long as the game is compatible, it's a really simple process. Don't die. Yeah, get dunked on.
I lack the tools for this. You dare.
The KONKR Pocket Fit also excels at Android gaming, especially games that support controllers. Now, you can always use the touchscreen mapper that comes with the device, but I always think I have better luck in games with controller support out of the gate, like this racing game, Asphalt Legends. Vroom vroom. Or even Fortnite here. The youth are always asking for footage of this one. Hello, children. Watch me drop the gritty on this fool. And then as far as streaming goes, anything that's available through Android is probably going to work really well. As long as you have a decent Wi-Fi connection, this will handle anything you throw at it as far as streaming is concerned. And the way that these sticks and all the controls are laid out, it's extremely comfortable for games all the way from like NCAA football to a competitive first-person shooter. Well, Gary, the clock on the wall says it's time for What Did We Learn? And we learned that for around $240 to $340, you can get the best pound for pound gaming device of the year. Maybe of all time, at least so far. Maybe the Odin 3 will absolutely blow this out of the water, kind of like the Odin 2 did with my old Pocket Air, but I don't think so. You are honestly getting some of the absolute best as far as power, performance, device quality, the controls, the ergonomics, pretty much everything outside of the screen. And if you're not an OLED absolutist, this is still a solid as hell LCD panel. I honestly have very, very few notes on this thing. My only complaints are the ridiculously small sticks this thing came with, but I fixed it with hype sticks, and there are tons of other Etsy stores or even free 3D printer files for replacements. Look, if you already have a Thor or an Odin 3 on the way, maybe pass on this. But otherwise, I would say it's an easy recommendation. It is one of the best price to performance ratio devices out there, at least until the pre-orders stop in a week or two, and I couldn't honestly recommend anything else over this outside of super niche budget devices, or maybe some specific form factor devices, or maybe something with some intense handles if you got some hand issues. But otherwise, it's an all-around winner. This thing even starts to knock some of the older lightweight x86 devices into irrelevancy when you factor in GameHub or Winlator. You can play a lot of those indie gems from Steam on here at 1080p at full speed with increased battery life and decreased bulk. And when you think about it, it is crazy to think about how far we've come for a $240-ish handheld compared to the days of the old Pow Kitties or the Ambernick 351 line. I remember when these were going for $100, $150. It's crazy. Speaking of coming far, what? If you want to see this channel continue to grow and improve, be sure to like and subscribe. We're about 15,000 subs away from 100,000, and it would be awesome to hit that milestone. Plus, we're entering the Christmas season, so tons of new handhelds are dropping, and if you want to see coverage from the entire Retro Handhelds review team, be sure to join now. Anyway, I gotta go back to playing some Switch JRPGs on this thing, so thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.